The town of Ravens Creek had always been a place where the deadliest threat seemed to be the biting cold of winter or the occasional drunk driver on its winding roads. Nestled between thick pine forests and isolated highways, the town was a relic of simpler times, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were supposed to be as scarce as crime. But beneath that serene surface, something dark was beginning to stir. It all started with Claire Jensen. She was a bright-eyed, hopeful young woman, recently graduated and working at the local diner. She had plans, dreams of leaving Ravens Creek and building a life far from its confines. But her dreams were cut brutally short one frigid November night. Her body was found by a passing hunter in a clearing near the outskirts of town, just where the forest gave way to farmland. The scene was so horrific it defied belief. Claire's body had been mutilated in a way that suggested a rage beyond human comprehension. But what truly shook the investigators was the absence of vital parts. Bits of muscle and flesh missing, as if someone had fed on her. Her face was marred by claw marks and bite wounds, more akin to a predator than a person. Sheriff Mike Tanner, a man who had served the town for over 20 years, felt a knot tighten in his stomach when he saw the crime scene. He had dealt with accidents, domestic violence, and the occasional theft, but this was different. It wasn't just a murder, it was a message. A message that said the peace in Ravens Creek was over. The town plunged into chaos. People locked their doors early, children were kept indoors, and rumors about cults, ritual sacrifices, and ancient evils began circulating. The media descended quickly, sensationalizing the story and dubbing the unknown killer the Hungry Devil. The name stuck, fueled by the gruesome nature of the crimes and the chilling notion that the killer might be cannibalizing his victims. As more bodies appeared over the following weeks, each left in more exposed places, it became clear the killer was toying with the town. The bodies were staged, positioned grotesquely to maximize horror, some arranged in a mockery of a feast, sending a clear, terrifying signal. The killer wasn't just hungry for food. He was hungry for fear, control, and infamy. Sheriff Tanner felt the pressure mounting from all sides. The townspeople demanded answers. The media demanded sensationalism. And the killer seemed to be watching, waiting to strike again. The investigation was complicated by the killer's disturbing intelligence. There were no clear forensic leads, no obvious pattern to the murders, only escalating brutality. Then came the cryptic message scrawled in blood at the latest crime scene: "Feed the hunger, or be the feast." It was both a taunt and a promise, signaling that the killer's madness was far from over. Desperate, Tanner and his deputies started combing through the town's dark past, searching for anyone who fit the profile of a man capable of such horrors. That's when they heard about Daniel Crow. Daniel was a shadow on the town's periphery, a drifter with a history marked by psychiatric hospital stays and violent outbursts. He kept to himself, living in the abandoned mill on the edge of town, a place locals avoided. His past was marred by tragedy. Abandoned as a child, abused, and repeatedly institutionalized, Daniel was a walking ghost, a man whose pain was as deep as the scars he bore. Witnesses reported seeing Daniel near several crime scenes, and when the police finally arrested him, he was found with strange, disturbing drawings depicting scenes of violence and hunger, images that hinted at a fractured mind obsessed with consumption, both literal and metaphorical. But even with Daniel in custody, Sheriff Tanner couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare was far from over. Daniel's madness was undeniable, but the question lingered: was he truly the killer, or just another broken pawn in a more sinister game? And as the town waited for justice, the shadow of the Hungry Devil continued to loom, a dark hunger waiting to be sated. Daniel Crow's arrest sent a ripple of relief and dread through Ravens Creek. For some, the nightmare seemed finally over. The Hungry Devil caught, the town safe once more. But for Sheriff Mike Tanner, the peace was anything but certain. From the moment he saw Daniel, the pieces didn't quite fit. Daniel was a gaunt figure with haunted eyes, his frame trembling as if haunted by unseen demons. The officers described him as calm but distant, his gaze often drifting to a place far beyond the sterile walls of the jail cell. His silence was unsettling, broken only by occasional mutterings about voices and the hunger. Digging into Daniel's past revealed a lifetime steeped in pain and isolation. Born to an alcoholic mother who vanished when he was a boy, Daniel was shuffled between foster homes where abuse was common and love was rare. His earliest memories were of cold nights alone, his cries ignored by a world that had forgotten him. By his teens, Daniel had been institutionalized multiple times. Doctors labeled him schizophrenic, a diagnosis he neither confirmed nor denied. Trapped in his own fractured reality, he was discharged with little support, left to drift in the shadows of Ravens Creek, an invisible man haunted by hunger that went beyond food, an insatiable void gnawing at his soul. But was Daniel really the hungry devil, or merely a scapegoat, a broken man easy to blame for horrors he didn't commit? The evidence was disturbing yet circumstantial. The bloody drawings found in his abandoned mill depicted grotesque scenes of cannibalism and murder, horrifying visual diaries of a fractured mind obsessed with devouring others. Witnesses placed him near the scenes, but no direct physical evidence linked him conclusively to the killings. Sheriff Tanner's team dug deeper, questioning longtime residents, old acquaintances, and mental health professionals who had treated Daniel. They found a pattern. Daniel had been in the vicinity during several attacks, but also that others with dark pasts roamed Ravens Creek. The town's isolation bred secrets, whispered rumors of a shadowy figure stalking the woods, an unknown presence feeding off the town's fears. Then the murders continued. One chilling night, a body was found mutilated in a place Daniel had an airtight alibi for. The mutilations bore the same savage marks, the same grotesque pattern of missing flesh, but the killer had struck again while Daniel was locked up. The nightmare had evolved. The hungry devil was no longer just a man. It was an idea, a ghost in the town's veins. Frustration mounted, and tensions in the town exploded. Fear transformed into paranoia. Vigilante groups formed, accusing anyone who looked or acted suspicious. Racism and prejudice festered as outsiders and marginalized groups became targets. Daniel, despite his incarceration, became the symbol of everything the town feared: mental illness, violence, and the unknown. Sheriff Tanner found himself trapped in a maze of bias, desperation, and unanswered questions. The investigation turned to new theories. Was the killer working alone? Was there a copycat? Was someone manipulating the town's darkest fears for their twisted agenda? A breakthrough came when forensic teams uncovered faint traces of an unknown DNA profile on one of the victims, a profile that didn't match Daniel or anyone in the local database. The killer's identity was slipping through the cracks, and time was running out. At the same time, Tanner began receiving anonymous letters, cryptic, taunting notes filled with grotesque imagery and unsettling promises. The sender claimed intimate knowledge of the murders and hinted at a conspiracy far deeper than a lone psychopath. The hungry devil was feeding not just on flesh but on power, using fear as a weapon to control Ravens Creek. In the shadows of the investigation, Daniel's mental state deteriorated rapidly. Locked away from the world he barely understood, he muttered about hunger. Not just the physical kind, but a hunger for justice, for vengeance against those who had wronged him. His broken mind blurred the lines between victim and villain, leaving the town to wonder if they had captured a madman or a martyr. Ravens Creek stood on the edge of collapse, divided by fear, stained by blood, and haunted by a killer who might never be caught. The hungry devil was no longer just a name whispered in fear. It was a symbol of everything rotten beneath the town's fragile peace. Sheriff Tanner knew one thing for certain: the truth was far more terrifying than anyone could imagine. And in Ravens Creek, the hunger was just beginning. The cold autumn air wrapped Ravens Creek in a suffocating silence as Sheriff Mike Tanner prepared for what could be the final confrontation. The town's nerves were frayed, the thin veil of normalcy ripped apart by months of terror and suspicion. The anonymous letters had stopped, but the feeling of being watched lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. The forensic breakthrough pointing to an unknown DNA profile reignited the investigation. Tanner's team, working tirelessly, traced the DNA to a man named Gabriel "Gabe" Harlow, a local recluse known for his strange behavior and violent temper. But Gabe had an ironclad alibi. He'd been hospitalized for a psychiatric evaluation during the latest murder. The deeper Tanner dug, the more tangled the web became. Gabe and Daniel Crowe had crossed paths in the past. Two broken men whose shared history blurred the lines between victim and predator. Documents revealed that both had been part of a controversial state-funded mental health experiment aimed at curing violent tendencies. A program abruptly shut down due to malpractice and corruption. The realization hit Tanner hard. Someone had weaponized this experiment, using its failures as cover for a series of brutal murders. The hungry devil wasn't just a killer. He was a symptom of a system corrupted by greed, prejudice, and neglect. Tanner confronted the town's powerful elite, uncovering attempts to silence whistleblowers and bury the truth. The mayor, the head of the local hospital, and law enforcement officials all had reasons to keep the horrors hidden, protecting reputations at the cost of innocent lives. Meanwhile, Daniel Crowe's condition worsened. In a rare moment of lucidity, he confessed to some killings but insisted others were the work of a shadowy figure he called the Butcher. His descriptions matched disturbing reports of a second assailant seen lurking near some crime scenes. One night, Tanner received a tip-off. The abandoned asylum where the experiment had taken place was the key. When he and his team investigated, they found a hidden basement filled with grotesque evidence. Surgical tools, cages, and documents detailing unspeakable human experiments. Suddenly, the hungry devil was no longer just a person. It was a monstrous legacy of cruelty, exploitation, and unpunished evil. The final act unfolded in a tense standoff at the asylum. Tanner faced Gabe, who had escaped the hospital, consumed by rage and madness. The two men fought in the dark corridors, shadows flickering under the failing lights. Gabe, driven by years of torment and betrayal, confessed to the murders he committed in a twisted bid to expose the conspiracy. A horrific cry for justice turned deadly. Tanner managed to subdue Gabe, but the victory felt hollow. Ravens Creek would never be the same. The town's fractures ran too deep, scars left by fear, prejudice, and unchecked power. In the aftermath, Daniel Crowe was transferred to a secure psychiatric facility, his fate uncertain. The experiment's architects faced charges, but many walked free, shielded by privilege and corruption. Ravens Creek learned a brutal truth. Monsters aren't always the ones lurking in the shadows. Sometimes, they wear suits, hide behind doors of power, and feed on the vulnerable. The hungry devil was finally unmasked, but the hunger it symbolized would haunt the town for generations.